my nurse was absolutely wonderful. I went to RMA. Some of you may have gone there as well. My nurse was fantastic, and she actually called me, and they had started the whole complimentary care. And she called me, it was probably about a week after the final attempt, and she said, you know, I think it's probably good if you come in and talk to somebody here, you know. And I was literally in bed when she called, and I'm like, you know what, like Tina was saying before, it is about choices, and I made that choice to go in. And during fertility was the first time that I had really sought out some help in that whole web of connectedness. It's really funny, in the whole mind-body connection. I actually joined a fertility support group too, which I thought was great. And it was the first time I'd ever done anything like that in my life. And I just found it to be really helpful to get me through all the stuff going on, other women going through the same process and everything. But my husband and I went in, and we spoke with the counselor there at RMA, and it was really great, and she really suggested, you know, she basically put in front of us the two options that were left, which was egg donor or adoption. And for me and for my husband, the egg donor just wasn't really going to be the way we wanted to go, because we didn't know. I didn't know if maybe I couldn't carry a pregnancy, so maybe, you know, we'd get a little further and something would happen. And I just said, I can't go through another thing that I didn't have a guarantee.
I have to admit, I'm a little nervous being up here. I never thought I'd be sitting up here, or I never thought I'd be sitting out there. You know, I thought you always had to be careful so you didn't get pregnant. You know, that was the way I was always very good about those sort of things. And then when I met my wife, and we got married when we were about 40 years old, we thought, well, you know, we better get to this if we want to have children. So we jumped right into the. And I thought, you know, there's no reason to go to a fertility doctor. You know, we're going to get, you know, we're both healthy. You're going to get pregnant, and boom, 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 we'll have, you know, one healthy child, and that'll be enough. And it just didn't work out that way. We went through the, you know, some of the medical things, the Clomid, then we tried the IUI, then we did the IVF, and then we did the egg donor, and then Alex, my wife, did get pregnant twice, you know, the old-fashioned way, but you know, none of those worked. The egg donor pregnancy was probably emotionally the worst, because at 12 weeks she went to the hospital to the high-risk OBGYN, and they did all the high-resolution ultrasounds, and everything came back, you know, double thumbs up. You know, everything was fine. You know, the baby was growing properly, everything looked good, and then at 19 weeks the baby had passed. And I don't know if it would have been any worse or better if, you know, we had had bad news all along, but, you know, yeah, don't worry about it. You've had enough troubles, you know, everything's fine. Just seemed like it was that extra little, you know, zing that you just didn't really need to hear.
Because you fast forward to 2008, and there is no stopping point when you're going through treatment. There is the question of when is enough falls on the individual and the couple's shoulders, and not on anybody's else's. At RMA, we can offer you, basically, if you're having problems with a female factor, if it's eggs, we can offer egg donor. Male, sperm donor. If you have uterine problems, we can offer you a gestational carrier, although you can't deliver in New Jersey. We have embryo donation. You could actually, and I have had some couples use a sperm donor, egg donor, and a gestational carrier. So when is enough enough? Comes back to you. So it is a very complex decision, and once you decide to build your family, it becomes an inwardly focused decision. And adoption is one that often, even at our clinic, we sort of almost scoot over because we have so much more to offer you now, and it sort of gets thrown out along with the list of other ways to build your family. I will tell you, in all my years of doing this, I think really, if you peel back all the layers of when is enough, it really is that it's not a single moment in time, is it? That's in the movies. In the movies, you know, there's always that aha moment, and then there's, you know, the appropriate swell of music in the background, and then you go off, and, you know, we all know who's playing us in the movie of our life. For me, I've got a couple of contenders, but, you know, it is that dramatic moment. In real life, it's not usually that way. It's not that you do a cycle, find out that you're not pregnant, and say, that's it, that's enough, it is enough. No, for some people it is. It's really just that I can't take it anymore. But I think for most people, it's been working up to that. And it's that shift from saying, I want to have a pregnancy myself or with my partner, to saying, I want to be able to say, oh, you know, I see my eyes, your ears, you know, Uncle Harry's nose in this child, to saying, I want to be a parent. And whether you choose adoption or egg donation or embryo donation or whatever it might be, I think it is really that when you start to walk down a different path, it's saying enough. It is in terms of giving a little bit more space to other needs rather than the ones that we just assume are there.
So we had kind of tossed around adoption before. I mean, obviously we've been dealing with this fertility stuff for a while, so it was kind of like there in the background. And, you know, we actually took the advice of the counselor that we met with, and she said, I suggest go on a vacation. Go and have fun. Go and enjoy yourselves. But every day, talk about your feelings and talk about where you think you want to go. And she says, you know, set a time or don't set a time, but just every day address it. And even if the addressing is just like, we don't want to talk about it today, which my husband and I did. And we actually went to Mexico. We had a great time. And every day we talked about where we were at and what we were feeling. And I took that time to really think about it, and also, you know, to really begin the grieving process, which had been happening a little bit. Then my nurse again from RMA, she's fantastic, she called and said that Joni was actually doing a session, same session here, the Crossing the Bridge from Infertility to Adoption. She was like, no, I think it might be a good thing for you to come to. And my husband and I went, and it was, again, fantastic. And for the first time, I am always emotional, always crying, just at anything, happy, sad, whatever. And for the first time, I sat in that session, and I knew that, and it was about 4 or 5 months after, you know, we'd had the failed 4th attempt, and I wasn't crying. And there were other women in the group crying, you know. And I just thought, I walked out there and I said to my husband, I'm like, this is really, I'm like ready. I feel like I've really grieved enough, because I really did want the experience, probably like most of you, to be pregnant and to give birth and the whole biological, and was I letting my husband down and all that. But I really felt like I was good with this choice, and that was almost 2 years ago now. That was.
You know, this wasn't going the way we thought it was, so we, you know, I guess somewhere in the meantime we'd mentioned, you know, adoption, what if, and we went to a you know, sort of an informational workshop at the Lawrenceville Public Library. I don't even know, probably at least a year and a half before any of this, before we first met Joni. And you know, we decided if we were going to do this, you know, we were going to get moving. Alex is pretty much, you know, what's the plans here? Let's move on. I mean, we certainly spent our time of feeling badly, but knew that the clock wasn't going to stop for us. So we jumped in as quickly as we could, and you know, took care of the home study, and you know, looked around for a few agencies and signed up with one, and we were like immediately matched. I mean, you know, I don't think our home study was even technically done, but we were, you know, matched but not matched with a birth mother, and we were like, this is great. You know, finally the bad luck is over, and that young woman sort of vanished at about 7.5 months into her pregnancy. She just fell off the face of the earth. And you know, these things happen, and you know, we were moving along, and we started to go to the pre-adoption work, to the pre-adoption monthly group, you know, sessions that Joni runs, and you know, it seemed like we were the family that had all the bad luck. And like I said, you know, during the pre-adoption, you know, monthly sessions, it was like, oh, and, you know, the last one, we would like to tell you about another adoption that fell apart. And the only thing that, you know, I can say is luckily, you know, we were around, or maybe unluckily, however you look at it, we were around other people that, you know, had, you know, some situations that didn't work out, and it made us know that, you know, we weren't doing anything wrong. And we certainly, like, you know, felt like, you know, maybe we'd done this wrong or done that wrong, but, you know, you knew we were around other people that were using different agencies or different attorneys, and just, you know, to know that it's just, you know, some of this is just circumstantially not right.
And then my son's birth mom called me, and the first conversation, I mean, the first conversation, the very first one I had with the birth mom was very nerve-wracking, but again, in meeting with Joni and talking about it, even I joined one of her expectant parents groups, so we actually did some role play and everything, which I thought was really great, and just really gave us a good basis of how to talk with a birth mom and what you want to cover and making that connection. And when I spoke with our son's birth mom for the first time, it was nerve-wracking. But, you know, no matter how nervous I was, she actually placed that call. So she's absolutely just as nervous, if not more so, and more courageous to actually place that call and to actually speak with somebody about this. And by the end of the conversation, I felt really connected. I called our attorney. She actually had called, she said that she'd be willing to speak with our attorney. So I was at work that day, and then at the end of the day, I called our attorney, and she's like, she seems great, you know, everything's great. You know, looks like this could be a good situation. And it turned out it really was. She called me back in December. Our son was due in May, and we did know at that point, too, that it was going to be a boy. He was due in May. He actually ended up coming a little early. He was 7 weeks early, and he was in March. He was absolutely fine. It was amazing that there was no like complications or anything. So he's a little guy, but he's absolutely adorable. And as far as bonding with him and everything, I was fortunate enough to be in the room when he was born. I cut the cord. I was the first non-medical person to hold him. And then the birth mom held him. I mean, it was just ultimately, it was the best scenario for me, and everybody's different in that, and every situation's different. Other people who are in my group, you know, they've all been down different paths and everything. But it was just fantastic. So I really feel like the birth mom and I had a really good, strong connection prior to the birth, and we spoke a lot. And then also, you know, obviously I was there for the birth. So I didn't know how it would be as far as, you know, I have a lot of nieces and nephews. My husband does as well, very close with all of them, love them all to death. And I thought, you know, how am I going to bond? Is this going to be any different? Because, you know, I don't feel like their mom, you know, I'm their aunt or whatever. And as soon as I held Liam, he was really just so perfect and so right and seemed so right to be ours that I really didn't have, you know, I just look at him and every day he's a blessing. And I don't have a problem bonding with him. He's just the greatest joy. And now he's at the point, like he's 3 months, so now he's at the point of looking at us and, you know, really engaging, starting to, and smiling back and everything. So, I mean, he's just adorable. That being said, there are definitely times where you after all those years of fertility stuff, where it's like, oh, get your hopes up, but remain reserved, you know. So there's still definitely some of that battling inside, but there's no doubt in my mind that he was meant to be ours, and that he found his way to us. And that I think the right child will find their way to you, however that is. If it's a boy or a girl, and whatever way, I really do. If that's where you want to be, the baby will find you, and I believe that. And the counseling is, you know, like I said, we belong to the expectant parents group, and it's just fantastic to look in someone else's eyes, and like Joni was saying before, you know, you might be laughing about something, you know, we all dealt with the holidays going through, or Mother's Day, Father's Day, all that kind of stuff, and we were like, oh, here we are again, you know, we don't have a child, you know, all that kind of stuff, and all the couples in the group were working through the same things, and now we're actually pretty much all on the path of either having a child, or, you know, we've been matched with somebody and they're expecting their children. So it's just fantastic, because I really see our group now, we've become so close, and I don't know if every group's like this, but our group, I think, is fantastic. And we just have, I think that we're going to continue, you know, because adoption is a continual journey. You know, this is the process to, okay, yes, we actually have our children now, but now we move on, and just like parenting, you know, just parenting questions and then some adoption things. So, you know, we had our meeting earlier this week with Johnny, and I was like, you know, you're not shaking us, because, you know, we're with you, you know. So whether it be one-on-one sessions that we had with Joni or our group sessions, I just found them both to be invaluable, because someone else going through the same process you, I think, is for me, and I think for my husband too. And I think, like Joni and Tina was saying before, the guys dealing with it, you know, Joni's very good at saying, okay, what are you feeling to my husband, you know, or to the other guys in the group. And I think that's really important, because I think it is something, it's not just, you know, what the women are going through, obviously, it's what the couple's going through. So it's been
You know, we didn't have the months of talking to the birth mother in advance that we've gone through with some of the other situations. So we went out there and we walked into the hospital and we met the birth mother and her boyfriend, and it was, we've met, we should have been like the king and queen of talking to birth mothers. We were experiencing this, we could run a class probably, and it was like, but you're nervous, there's no getting over this. But I had pinched a nerve in my ankle and I was limping terribly, and I didn't want to look like an old man limping into the hospital, so I'm trying to walk straight. My daughter, I hope she never hears any of these stories, but I'm trying not to limp, and I'm in absolute agony trying to walk straight. So anyway, we go in there and we met the birth mother and her boyfriend, and they were very nice, really were, they just needed to meet us. They had seen our profile book from the agency and just needed to put a face and know that, what we had written, seemed true. And then, it became a little bit businesslike at that point. Sarah, the birth mother, she really didn't want to stay in the hospital. This was tough for her, and she said it was tough for her, and she wanted, she was able to leave. So she left the hospital, and we spent the rest of that day, and I mean that whole day, in the hospital. But we were still kind of nervous. I mean, there was no question about it. We were nervous because, we had been in the hospital, we had held other babies before, we know there was no guarantee. But I think we certainly felt better, but, we're still sort of maybe expecting the shoe to drop. It's hard to explain to you. We held the baby, we fed the baby, we changed the baby. And, the birth mother came back with the social worker and, signed the preliminary paperwork. And by the laws or the process of that hospital or whatever, she needed to leave the hospital with the baby. She needed to carry the baby out. And on the curb, she handed the car, the baby in the car seat to us. And it's it's hard to describe. And it was Missouri in the summertime. It was about 110 degrees and thick, humid. We had to get her into the air conditioning because it was just it was something. I get a little choked up about it if I am. And what I just sort of realized now is probably everybody that I knew and worked with, probably knew we were trying to adopt a child. And what I've just realized, in the last month or so, it sort of hit me, is when people say, "How's Natalie?" or "How's the baby doing?" or whatever, because she was, she was a little colicky for a couple months and things like that. These things happen. It's like, that's not on the list of things you're expecting after all this. But people say, "How's your baby doing?" It's not how's your not how's your adopted. And a lot of people that even ask, I don't even know if they know that she's adopted or they don't. It's not part of the conversation anymore. She's our little girl.
When we circle back to the when is enough, you have to remember that's part of what's driving the when is enough. Those needs start coming to the forefront of saying my need is to experience all of that. And that lets me let go of this one way that I thought I was going to become a parent and open up room for the others, for other ways. And for many ways, what I will say is it's a walk along. We just assume I'm going to walk through that door. And there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to walk through that door unless I come up to that door and somebody's closed it. And not only closed it at this point, it locked it. So, what do we usually do? We pick up our heads, look around, and we say, okay, what other doors might be open for me to walk through? And I think that's more sort of a description of, as many people say, the process.